trades that Vijay Kedia is betting on. Neeraj, it's over to you.
All right, we are coming live to you from the Mumbai studios. Vinayak Chatterjee is at the CII headquarters, but he joins us in the Mumbai studios via brand new technology. Well, technically not brand new, we have used this, but this is something that is very innovative. The hologram technology right in front of your screens is Vinayak Chatterjee. Vinayak, so good having you. Thank you so much for joining in. Let's work with an assumption that the FM does have the leeway to dole out dollops of cash for the infrastructure spend. What do you think are the two key things that the finance minister has to do, can do, and will benefit the space?
Look, I think dollops of cash for the infrastructure sector is certainly a big expectation, but I would like to temper it with a little degree of realism. Point number one, remember, more and more government ministries and departments are less dependent on budgetary outlays and are raising resources off budget. And secondly, many departments and ministries this year have not increased the outlays that were earmarked for them in the last budget. So while increased outlays is welcome, I think your question is very relevant, that the real button to push is increased capacity of public systems to implement projects, which has been alluded to by Dr. Arvind Subramaniam in the economic survey, and doing some very major stuff for the private sector, including again the economic survey recommendation of PARA, which is a takeoff from the bad bank idea, but in a different avatar, which is the public, the public assets rehabilitation agency. Now, ideas around these is what we are also looking around for, other than just increased budgetary outlays. But back to you.
One quick question. There is something which is a long-term measure, but there are some short-term measures that the market would be expecting as well. What do you think is realistically possible, which could have a near-term impact, an immediate impact?
See, immediate impact on the markets is obviously increased allocation, because people see that as a signal towards increased spending for companies involved in that sector. I would put my bets on roads, railways and irrigation. And secondly, I think the market would be extremely happy if the FM alluded in some measure to take forward the idea of PARA, which, as I said, is the one agency which is being seen as a solution to both NPAs in banks and corporate balance sheets stressed, as well as stalled assets. So that would be one big idea that we would be looking forward to the FM taking forward.
Okay, Vinayak, thank you so much for joining in from the CI headquarters, but well, in a manner of speaking, right from our Bombay studios via the hologram technology as well. With that, it's back to you guys in the studios, Sandeep, Supriya and Nikunj.
Thanks, Neeraj. 60 minutes to the big budget speech. This is what we're calling a tryst with destiny, and we're doing programming at an unparalleled scale. And we've got some of the biggest economists, tax experts, CEOs and market experts joining us over the next 60 minutes in the build-up to the budget. Swaminathan Iyer, Maithili Busnurmat, we've got Hiren Ved, Adrian Mowat, Mukesh Bhutani, Madhu Kela. It's a stellar lineup that's going to build up to budget 2017, 60 minutes to the budget speech. Swaminathan Iyer, I'm going to throw it to you. The big question on everyone's mind, is this going to be a stimulus budget?
First and foremost, I said this has to be an election budget. There is no getting away from the fact that this is taking place just before what is the most important state election in Uttar Pradesh. If Modi is able to sweep Uttar Pradesh, it will put him in an excellent position then to win the next general election in 2019. So considering that, I mean, there's no point saying that an election budget will take place in 2018 or just before the budget. This is an election budget. Any way that you look at it, you cannot get away from it. Okay, then the question is, okay, it is an election budget, but what are they going to do in economic terms to push that particular political agenda? They are not going to be worrying about finicky little things of, 1% or 0.1 or 0.2% on the fiscal deficit. They are not going to be worrying about giving away a subsidy here and a subsidy there and a subsidy there. Already Mr. Narendra Modi in his New Year speech gave a number of small little financial goodies, some higher interest rate assured for senior citizens, interest subventions here and there for housing, for small industry. A lot of what might have been in Mr. Jaitley's speech was already announced by Narendra Modi before. And yet nobody believes that that is what is going to swing the election. What will swing the election is a really big thinking, big issue. I am personally convinced that he is going to take the position that I have cracked down on black money. I have got so much money from A, the extinction of uncashed notes, and from the voluntary disclosure scheme 1 and 2. If all of this adds up to, shall we say, 100,000 crores, this will suffice to put about 4,000 rupees into each one of the 26 million Jan Dhan accounts. And if he is able to do that, he can say, I am the first finance minister, I am the first politician to grab black money from all the people and give it to everybody. There has been much sneering by the Congress party, he said he's going to get black money and put huge sums of money, he has done nothing. As of now, that is true. But I think he is going to position himself not as a socialist. It is not a man taking from the rich and giving to the poor. He is taking from the dishonest and giving it to the masses. And I think that is an election winning overall arching strategy. That I think is going to be the main thing, that I am the person to give you better governance, more honest governance, and because of this, I'm going to have a better India for which you should elect me.
Right. Swami, just hold your thoughts there on the election budget and the imperative of this to be an election budget. Let's take this across to Adrian Mowat, who's joining us live right here on ET Now. Thanks very much, Adrian, for being with us. What is the one big thing that you will be watching out for as far as this budget is concerned? Is my presumption right that it will perhaps be fiscal prudence, fiscal deficit?
I think it's more going to be the sort of focus in terms of investment. You know, we've got an Indian economy that's doing okay, but some frustration on the level of capex within the economy. I think the private sector is unlikely to step in with decent capital investment because of the distortions, the volatility around demonetization, and now preparation for GST. So there is a requirement for the government to provide the economy with some direction in terms of investment. We do think that there will be a little bit of slippage on the fiscal roadmap, perhaps 3.5% fiscal deficit for the current year and 3.3 for FY18. So I think let's see what they're going to spend their money on. Now, for the capital market investors, there's the usual ongoing concerns about India's taxation of foreign wholesale money or institutional money. India sort of stands out there as being one of the few countries in the world that doesn't distinguish between the wholesale investors, so that's the international pension fund, mutual fund, versus the individual. We'd like to get some clarification on that. I think the market, though, fears that we might get a higher taxation on global institutional money.
It's all about taxes, isn't it? Whether it's local taxes or global taxes. So Madhu Kela, good morning to you as well, and thank you for joining us. From your standpoint and from a market standpoint, what are the three things that you think will make this budget a success, and you'll thumb the table and say, this is our budget?
So I think how do they, first of all, the whole market, from a market perspective, the market is focused on this, how the capital gains issue is being dealt with. So a lot of speculation is going on. I do not, personally my gut is that they would not do anything to disturb the apple cart. Second, I would be looking very closely as to what do they actually do for job creation, specifically in industries like housing, affordable housing, more specifically on textiles, on automobiles. So that is the second critical thing. And the third critical thing is, what are the assumptions on this budget? So one thing is achieving the number that you say that we'll be able to get to 3.3%. But what are the assumptions which they are taking to achieve these numbers?
On the budget. I think Adrian made the point about how taxation is going to be very critical in this budget, like it is with most other budgets, but specifically for the financial markets, you're going to keep a close eye on what he does as far as taxation is concerned. So who better than Mukesh Bhutani, one of India's finest tax experts, joining us here live in our studio in Mumbai. Mukesh, thanks for joining us. From a purely financial market point of view, what are the 2-3 things that markets are going to be closely watching out for in this budget?
I think one is the speculation that everyone is talking about. I think that he could do two things, alter the threshold for long-term capital gains and also levy tax on that. I think I would say that the market will be able to bear the shock of increasing the threshold from 12 to 24 months. We were discussing earlier whether there would be a short-term capital gains tax rate increase, taxing it as normal income at 33%. I see the probability of that is unlikely. The reason being that under any tax policy, you tax income using some basis and you tax capital using some basis. So you cannot have a philosophy of levying normal taxation on short-term capital gains as if it was an ordinary income. The point that one of your other panelists was making on the FII taxation, I think I expect at least an announcement in the budget because the government has put on hold the administrative circular which tends to have a negative impact on taxation of FIIs and FPIs applying the Vodafone law. I think in the first place that circular itself was ill-founded. The interpretation was not correct, and I would hope that the finance minister at least clarifies that that administrative circular on Vodafone indirect tax will not apply to FII and FPIs.
So we're all talking taxes, and Maitri, it's only fair that we pose this question to you because the whole idea of this budget has been that Finance Minister Jaitley will perhaps try to soothe frayed nerves by cutting direct taxes. You've got critics on the other side that say it solves no purpose, you've got to cut indirect taxes, which is contrary to the GST really. How does he balance these two arguments?
Well, it's going to be a very tough job for him for the simple reason that frankly even the basis on which he's building his tax estimates, that is very questionable because we really do not have even data from the CSO. We only have the first half of the year, and even the economic survey did not throw any light on it. So in fact all his numbers are going to be questionable. So this budget arithmetic that everybody set so much store by, I think in this particular budget we're not going to be able to attach much credence to the numbers. So that is my first point. And just coming back to something that Swami mentioned, I don't think budgets ever won any election anywhere in this country, particularly in a state like UP. I don't think development, economics, budgets mean anything at all. It's still a very feudal system, caste, class, religion. These are the factors that matter. So I think the Prime Minister was smart enough to realize that, which is why on the 31st of December he announced whatever SOPs he could announce. And frankly, I don't think the electorate in India really gets swayed by these SOPs. So budgets don't matter except for people sitting in this room or to the stock market and economists. I think
those
general
stocks perhaps are too incremental to win an election in any case. So I don't think maternity benefits win you elections.
I just wanted to make one point on the revenue side of the budget, which is a challenge, unique challenge that is posed for the government this year, is that they can't possibly estimate the service tax and excise duty revenues because on one hand you're saying GST is coming in. So what they are likely to do is the revenue side of the budget document is going to look very unique. It's going to throw up share of center's revenue coming out of GST. And again the challenge is, does he look at it from July 1 or does he look at it from September 1? So he will be able to estimate customs duty for the entire year, excise and service tax for part of the year, we don't know how much, but then the center's share in the GST revenues is something which is going to be a challenging exercise.
Ironical, and I'll throw that question to Hiren Ved. Hiren Ved, exactly a year ago when budget was presented, on the day budget was presented, the Nifty level was 6,800. Today it is 8,600. That's changed, it's a mirror image. So irrespective of whether it's a great budget or a poor budget or a wow budget, are we positioned for a sell-off because the pre-budget rally has been extraordinary and buy on rumors and sell on news, it could happen again?
No, I think, we have to first keep in mind that budgets alter the course of markets only for a couple of days.
So what will happen today after that?
I don't know, that depends on what they do in the budget. But my sense is that even though, people might say that there is a lot of hope that, there will be some kind of a stimulus in the budget, I think if you stick to the fiscal consolidation roadmap, there isn't really too much room to stimulate unless you are willing to take some risks. Risks of cutting indirect taxes, because the direct tax base is very low, but the direct tax is more emotive, so it has a direct appeal to people. But I think the only way this government can raise significant resources to make significant giveaways is if they truly do large-scale divestment. So if they, for example, go and list LIC, for example, or if they do strategic sales in some PSUs, I mean, you have to sell the Sooty stake. I mean, I don't know why you're holding on to that. You have to do Balco, which, has been carried over from the previous government. You can potentially raise 75,000 to 100 lakh crores if you do large-scale disinvestment. I know it's easier said than done. You always put a figure, you never achieve that. But that's the only way you can probably give a significant stimulus which is in excess of 0.5% of GDP Otherwise, frankly speaking, there is not much space that you can do. And rest of the direct tax is basically tinkering here or there. It may not have a very big revenue impact, on that. It has a more sentimental impact.
Let's get in Adrian Mowat in as well. Adrian, I'm sure you've been hearing our panel, and I think this concern is going to be there on the credibility of the numbers, given the fact that we don't know how's the arithmetic going to add up, how is it all going to add up because of the demonetization exercise. The CSO numbers didn't throw much light, nor did the economic survey. Is that a concern for foreign investors as well? The whole budget arithmetic, even if the finance minister were to throw a number, how credible is that going to be? We don't know when is GST going to kick in, like Mukesh was making the point, if it's July, is it October, is it September, and a lot of things will change.
Well, I think it'll be interesting just to see what assumptions the finance minister is using, and then we can debate those assumptions. Does it give us a clue, for instance, on expectations around GST? But your question is interesting just in terms of think about the psychology here on the private sector. They too are struggling to come up with numbers, projections on what trend sales growth is, profitability, because of the distortion around demonetization. Follow that with GST, and I think this could be another year in which the corporate private sector capex disappoints again because there are concerns about the credibility of numbers.
Indeed. Let's take this across to Madhu Kela. And Madhu, I know the markets have been very brittle as far as sentiment is concerned, specifically on LTCG. There is so much speculation in the market. Could you put the record straight on how the various scenarios would play out in terms of the LTCG? There is some talk about the tenure being reviewed for withholding listed securities. There's another one that says it could go up from 12 to 24 months with no change in the STT. What would the impact on markets really be?
So best case is they don't do anything. That is the best case. The worst case is that, below 1 year, everything is considered as business income. Between 1 to 3 years is short-term capital gains, and above 3 years is long-term capital gains. So this, to my mind, will be bad for the markets, at least in the short term. And the base case is if they increase the tenure only of long-term capital gains from 1 to 3 years, I think market will be able to absorb that.
Right. Swami, Hiren Ved here was making this point about divestment. And I know, again, on divestment, the credibility of this government is pretty poor. Every year they sort of throw a number and they get nowhere close to it. Is it time for the government to look at out-of-the-box solutions? Where is the why is it not doing justice to its political capital? In NDA 1, we had those privatization. Is it time to look at strategic stake sale in a completely different light? And more importantly, do you think this government has the stomach to do that? Does it have the political will to do that? Or is the Prime Minister too conscious of maintaining this so-called pro-poor image?
It's not just a pro-poor image. It's also a question of what does the RSS feel. The RSS is not strongly in favor of privatization either. There are some obvious trade unions. The BMS wouldn't be particularly happy about that either. So, there are internal strains within the BJP which come in the way. There is an alternative suggestion which Arun Jaitley had created earlier about what he called asset recycling. What about selling old roads, selling old ports, thing that we have in order to build new ones? That I think would be less controversial than privatizing an existing public sector undertaking. I mean, we have a situation where the fertilizer plants, which should have been shut down, instead of that at enormous expense, you're trying to revive old bankrupt ones. It shows the political difficulty of shutting down or selling a going public sector enterprise. So one way is to get away from the public sector enterprises to selling other assets like roads, ports and various other such things and use them for building new such in that particular area. There is also, I think, now the proposal, as they did in the airports, that if I find it so difficult to sell, let me give things out on management contract. And that can fetch a certain amount of money. I think perhaps that is the way you're going to go. I would agree with you that there's very little credibility on privatization. We would have to be finding ways of getting revenue in other streams. I might also add that with the kind of fall in demand, the idea that you can get huge prices for spectrum or coal mines or some of those natural resources, I think in the current atmosphere, the prices would be less and the government would be very reluctant to sell at what is called throwaway rates. So there would be problems there too. So You cannot depend, I think, on these streams to fetch very large sums of money in the coming year.
Okay, let me have a very contra view here. And Adrian, of late the CPSE ETF has been a success for Indian government. Indian PSU stocks are doing well. And since Indian government owns a lot of iron ore companies, metal companies, oil companies, given the fact that commodity cycle has stabilized, do you think it would be easy for government to sell some of their good quality name? Adrian, this question was for you.
Yeah, so look, I think it's a lot easier than it would have been this time last year. Remember this time last year, I mean, you've been commenting on where the Nifty is today versus a year ago. Emerging markets have fallen sharply. China was limit down. Commodities were continuing to fall. It was February before we made the lows in commodity markets. We've now had a substantial recovery from where we were 12 months ago, but still down quite a bit on 3 years ago. But the environment is better for selling material assets, as in, resources companies. Profitability has returned. And so I think there is a higher probability of divestment in that environment.
Right. Mukesh Bhutani, let's get down to the specifics. A lot of people there believe, and I think we interviewed Chidambaram yesterday, and he said that the idea to spur demand and to boost consumption will be to cut indirect taxes. Now that is in direct contrast to what the GST expects the budget to do, which is rationalize the threshold levels. What happens to taxes there? Service tax, the obvious assumption is that it should go up from 14% onwards to 18%, meet GST somewhere. The excise high that we saw, it was almost a sugar high of sorts in January, that's going to wane off. What does the finance minister do specifically on those particular things?
Well, if you have to spur demand, generally you have to be believing in moderate tax rates for direct and indirect tax. But I think your question on service tax increase is different in the sense that will he take a decision in this year's budget to increase it to the normal 18%? Or will there be two rates of service tax? I think it will be disastrous for us to have two rates of service tax like you have multiple rates in goods. So I will not be surprised, and I don't think the market should consider that as a shock if the service tax rates increase. Insofar as the basket of direct and indirect taxes is concerned, we as a country are highly non-compliant from a direct tax standpoint.
Right.
So in a way, what has happened in IDS 1, IDS 2 is going to result in two things. One, you'll have more taxpayers getting added. You'll have existing set of taxpayers which will be far more compliant, and over a period of time, it's not an exercise that will be done in a year or two. Over a period of time, you will land up with a reverse situation where your direct tax contribution will be more than the indirect tax contribution, because alongside the GST run-up, you'll also see a fallout in the overall GST rates, but that is a time frame of 5 to 7 years, provided you have good quality administration and more importantly, you have more compliances. These two are assumptions that have built in.
I think it's worth spending some time on tax buoyancy. We saw 14.5% being budgeted in the last year. Unreal figures for this fiscal, one would say, the coming fiscal?
Yeah, it's going to be quite difficult, as I said, particularly because we really do not know on GST. Because if GST is implemented from July, actually short term there will be a dip. And though Mukesh is against the idea of a dual rate for services, there is a strong case actually for taxing services at differential rates. Because if you were to tax, say, education fees, lower school level education, as against, the IIMs, etc., at different rates. So there is a case really for having some kind of different rates for service taxes. It would become more difficult, definitely. But it's very difficult for us to say today what will the GST revenue be like. How much will the centre have to compensate? Because the centre has agreed to compensate the entire loss of the states. Where does the centre get that money from? It's going to be very, very difficult.
Right. Hiren, before we let you go, I know you're in a rush. As far as taxes are concerned, what is it the market is expecting, other than long-term capital gains, which of course we've talked about at length, but would the market like a sharp cut in corporate tax? Is that something that the market would welcome, or is it more concerned about what exemptions get withdrawn? Hiren, your view on that?
No, I think I said this earlier, is that there is a roadmap for cutting corporate tax rates. But there isn't a better time to cut corporate tax rates aggressively now rather than leave it for 19, because the idea is that the quicker you spur growth, the better dividends you'll have going into 2019 in terms of greater revenue. Hopefully you take the risk today. You have enough of a runway for the next 18 months for tax buoyancy to come in. See, the other thing is that I also believe that in the small and medium enterprises, and this is anecdotally speaking to a lot of people, is that if he brings down the tax rates to very moderate tax rates, people are likely to show more income and profits in their actual books, and whereby you'll get greater tax buoyancy. So I think the time to take a slightly aggressive take on corporate tax rates is now. You get the benefit over the next 1 or 2 fiscal years. You use that to then spend on social programs, which is anyway your political objective.
Adrian, let's talk about the India positioning irrespective of today's budget. You know, what happens today would be an emotional reaction. The sensible reaction, I guess, would equalize in 2 or 3 days. Do you think now Indian markets have all the ingredients to be an emerging market outperformer, because of late we have been an emerging market underperformer?
No, I don't think India is an outperformer. We currently rate it as a neutral. We have underweight in the IT space, very concerned about the policy coming out of the United States. We are underweight healthcare for similar reasons, underweight consumer staples, as we generally don't like expensive defensives. The areas that we are overweight relate to housing, infrastructure, where we think that there's a little bit more fiscal clarity around that. We're currently neutral in both financials as well as consumer discretionary, simply expressing a view that we're unsure about a results season post-demonetization. So I think at best India performs in line with emerging markets rather than outperforms. And we are talking a lot about today's budget in India. But remember, there's a lot of things going on globally that are influencing the Indian capital markets and will influence the Indian economy.
Indeed. Swami, if I may throw this to you before we actually go deep into the markets, this is really on capital expenditure, capital formation at multi-year lows. The opposition has been attacking the government on that. What is it that the finance minister can do, other than, of course, increasing outlays for roads and infrastructure and railways, apparently 50,000 crore for railways, but what is it that he can do to ensure that big investment starts breaking ground? There is capital formation. What is it that public sector expenditure can do in that space?
Me?
Swami, yes, it's you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I would say that don't depend on the budget for this. I think, if we have already an investment rate of whatever 30 to 34%, depending on the gross fixed capital, say 30%, to try and add another 0.1 or 0.2% to that through the budget at the expense of fiscal consolidation, to my mind, makes no sense at all. Therefore, I think on the fiscal deficit, you need to get down to 3%, give credibility to yourself on a long-term basis, and that itself will pay off in the form of larger foreign investment and larger foreign confidence that, this is a government that means business on the fiscal issue. That's important because our fiscal deficit, center and state combined, remains among the highest in the world, and it is a long-term danger signal. So what should the government be doing? You shouldn't be doing, one thing, of course, you need to get the corporate tax rate down. I fully agree with the other people that you need to be competitive with other Asian countries as far as the corporate tax rate is concerned. And if you do that, that itself will inspire a larger amount of investments to come in. You need to improve the ease of doing business to the extent there's less uncertainty on a large number of tax measures or kinds of taxation, simplicity. I think these are the ways to go forward. I don't think that you should be just spending more and more money out of the budget. As Vinayak Chatterjee said earlier, you already have a large amount of scope for off-budget raising of sums for infrastructure. And all of that has not been spent. There remains bottlenecks on the capacity of the state to spend productively. We seem to have an infinite capacity to spend unproductively, but when it comes to good, solid, productive capacity, it's limited. So let's not depend too much on budget investment outlays. Let the budget improve the overall atmosphere, whereby there is more private investment, more foreign investment. That is the way to go.
We'll have one final question with you, and this really is on structural reforms, the need for structural reforms. One such structural reform that we will perhaps see in the life of this calendar year will be the GST. But what else will you expect from the union budget to set the tone or the fervor for? Adrian.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, I realized the question was to me. Look, I don't think we're looking for this budget for a new set of reforms. We've had substantial reforms. We're discussing GST. I think this is more about assumptions that the government's going to make in terms of its revenue numbers and their expectations around the economy. Maybe we can get a little bit of clarification on spending priorities and some clarification on taxation. But I don't think this is going to be a budget that expresses a new structural reform.
I know it's been a busy day for you. Thank you for accommodating this interview request. Really appreciate your time. Markets, meanwhile, while Nifty is not going anywhere, it's very unlike the pre-budget pre-session, because normally on the budget day, even before the budget speech is stable, we tend to see a lot of volatility. And our technical experts are ready. Let me quickly see if I can carve out some trades or pre-budget trades for our viewers. CK, anything you can really spot for our viewers in terms of a trade? A quick 30-second answer.
Well, I think it's been a quiet morning, but within that, I would be looking to buy into a Tata Chemicals. See, it's almost like a normal day today. Let's say budget-related things will happen later. So, considering it yet to be a normal day, look to buy into a Tata Chem at the current price with a price target at 555.
Kunal, the question was for you.
Well, Nikunj, one of the other stocks which I would probably watch out for would be, Dewan Housing. I think the stock is nearing a breakout, of its short-term chart patterns. 289 to 90 seems to be a resistance point, but I think looking at the chart patterns, I believe the stock can see a substantial breakout from a short-term perspective. So that is one stock which traders can look to bet upon with a target of at least 310, stop loss of 272.
And Siddharth Babra, anything which is popping up on your screen which could be worth a trade for next 3-4 hours?
Yeah, for 3-4 hours and probably for more, Nikunj, is a pair trade where I would suggest to short CNXIT and go long Bank Nifty. I don't see any news or trigger pertaining to banking sector which would be negative, and the positive momentum should continue in banking, and that's what we are seeing in PSU and some of the private space as well. And CNXIT, be it Infosys, Wipro, TCS, we are seeing huge pile-up of short positions, and I think this sector is going to go under some serious pain. So that would be a pair trade from my end for next 3-4 hours, as well as for carry forward position. Short CNXIT, go long in Bank Nifty.
Alright, just hold your thoughts there because we've got to get more stock specific, and Tanveer Gill is joining us from our ATM desk to take the action forward with Purunju. Tanveer?
Thanks very much for that, Supriya. And Purunju is talking about betting on the big consumption theme, which has never failed investors, local as well as global, when it comes to the India story. Purunju, we are going to be expecting some tax rebates, more money in the hands of consumers. The demonetization story has played out. We are at pre-demonetization level for the market. So the consumption story goes forward from here. Is that your big theme?
Of course, the whole India is a consumption story today. You can't really have a particular segment into consumption. So we have come, as you rightly told, the pre-demonetization levels. That basically indicates that there was no big budget rally. It only corrected the earlier rational move of the market. So that way, I think market has a long way to go. But one cannot rule out some kind of, temporary sell-off for some provisions of the budget. But that is nothing but an opportunity for investors to pick stocks. And it won't long last also. I'm very confident about that.
Right, so then these are the stocks that you're focusing on from a consumption perspective. For viewers tuned in right now, the high long-term, high conviction ideas.
Again, I think I have my regular, few stocks which we already discussed. Yeah. See Tata Global Beverages, which they had some hiccups in between, but I like the stock. It has big potential, and similarly the FCEL and the other future group companies. There are a lot of such stories in this country. Yeah, Tata Coffee is also good.
Like it.
Yeah, that's also not a consumption story as it is. I think investors should give more importance to the economic trend, which is much beyond the budget, because such major things are happening I think, out of budget. Right. That's this time especially. So that is the big picture, and investors can take cues from that. That's more important than some of the budget provisions. I think budget should be generally, the expectation is that it will keep the financial prudence and it will be growth oriented, the economic growth oriented.
Yeah, that's true.
If things like that happen, what's going to happen is there's huge fund flow is going to happen to India, Indian markets.
No, definitely. But as I hand it back to the studios, I think for viewers tuned in right now, the focus is on consumption squarely. That's what Purunju Veliath is saying. He's good at picking value bets in the market. So he's betting on Tata Global Beverages, Tata Coffee, as well as future consumers. It's back to you.
Thanks for that, Tanveer. Purunju, of course, is one of India's finest stock pickers, joining us live and exclusive on Budget Day. And he's going to be joining us through the day, identifying some stocks for our viewers. We're going to slip into a short break here on Budget Day Live. Our guests in the studio stay on. Swaminathan Iyer, Maithili Busnurmad, Mukesh Bhutani are with us. And joining us in just a few minutes from now will be Ramesh Damani live from BSE. We've got Jahangir Aziz and Madhu Kela as well. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment with Budget Day Live on ET Now.
Staying with us, well, as we are talking about the finance minister could do to kickstart the domestic economy, and he's expected to stand on the floor of parliament in less than half an hour. IT is where the real problem is. The IT index yesterday took a knock off nearly 3.5%, add another 2.5%. That's 5% off for the IT index. So for a market watcher, budget is crucial, budget is important, but IT is where the real pain is. But it is the budget day, and our entire programming is centered around what we should expect from Finance Minister Arun Jaitley when he will stand on the floor of the Parliament. Market veteran and seasoned market commentator Ramesh Damani joins us. Ramesh, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Ramesh, there is a lot of chatter, confusion, chaos and uncertainty on what will happen to long-term taxation structure and short-term taxation structure. Do you think markets are unnecessarily worried, or any change in the taxation structure from a capital market standpoint is a serious concern?
Hi, good morning guys. Nice to be with you on such a nice day on the budget. To answer Nikunj, your basic question, long-term capital gains, I think it's much ado about nothing, to quote Shakespeare. I think in the matter of public policy, if they introduce a very small long-term capital gains, which is what I'm understanding New Delhi is going to do, and maybe even change the holding period for 2 years, there's some public merit in doing that, because a promoter transferring 1,000 crores worth of shares gets away tax-free. That doesn't make for good public policy. So I think the bigger fear for the market would be if they change the short-term capital gains from the regular rates to the slab rates. I think that would be a huge detriment to the market. I don't think anyone's going to change their investing decision based on the fact that they have to pay a few percentage points of capital gains. So short-term capital gains is more worrisome to me. I think long-term capital gains probably going to be tinkered with, but a small one that the market could live with.
Aside of long-term capital gains, it's ironical. I think this time last year as well, ahead of the budget, we were speaking about long-term capital gains. Probably tells us that, there aren't too many things to talk about from a market point of view. But you're a market veteran. What else is the market going to be closely watching out for in the budget? What is it that the market will like if the finance minister were to do in this budget?
I think it depends on the constituencies. I think the foreign constituencies want the fiscal to come in at 3% next year. I think they want not too many populist programs taking place, the so-called against the Robin Hood budget. I think what I'm particularly looking forward to is the disinvestment target. I think the government, if you read the notes carefully, read the economic advisors' interviews carefully, read between the lines, they're suggesting they're ready now to bite the bullet and go for strategic disinvestment. They have proposed, for example, BEML to go for strategic disinvestment, NMDC to go in for strategic disinvestment. The government clearly needs resources. Demonetization provided a bit of the resources, much less than expected. Disinvestment can provide the whole slug of it. It depends on how far and how creative the government is willing to go. My sense is this budget might provide an indication as to the amount the government is willing to use for disinvestment. So if they agree to a larger amount, that can only come through strategic disinvestment. And I think if the market starts believing that, I think market does not believe that the government
has the stomach to go in for strategic disinvestment. But if the market starts believing that, you could see a rip-roaring rally in the balance of the PSUs. They have already led the market so far post demonetization, but I think the strength will continue once the market comes to grips with the fact that a lot of the public sector companies are for sale.
All right, just hold your thoughts there. I'm going to get in Jahangir Aziz into our discussion as well. And Jahangir, let's be candid here. Are you suggesting in some ways on the show this morning that the consumption growth is a matter of how transitory or non-transitory will the impact of demonetization be? Or are you someone who actually believes that lack of data seems to suggest that we're actually whistling, actually budgeting in the dark?
Look, I mean, obviously we aren't able to capture fully what the impact of demonetization is, simply because we do not have a template against which we can benchmark it. If you look at countries in the past that have used demonetization, these are typically countries that is trying to reset the economy from very high inflation levels, and in that context it makes sense to say, okay, I'm going to demonetize. This is an economy that was running at 7.5%, where inflation was about 4 or 5%. If you demonetize in that economy, the consequences of that, are unprecedented because we don't have a template to figure it out. But, one can make reasonable, estimates about by using the channels of how demonetization affects to figure out that what kind of sequencing will happen in demand and supply side. In general, we do know that whether it's demonetization or anything else, we do know that if you take away a large portion of money supply suddenly, then the consequences on the economy are typically bad. And my sense is that what we are struggling with is to figure out, is this consequence going to last for a long time, or is this consequence simply a matter of the money supply coming back, which most reasonable estimates would suggest sometime in by the first half of 2017 it should be back. So I think the debate more is on whether or not the act of demonetization actually disrupted the supply side of the economy more than the demand side of the economy, and that's where I think most of the debate is, because if it has disrupted the supply side of the economy, it's going to take much longer period of time for the economy to recover than if it's simply a demand shock driven by the lack of liquidity, which is what the interpretation by most of the market is.
Maithili, comment on that. Do you agree with Jahangir, the fact that it's going to be so difficult for the government to to budget, to get the numbers right in this particular budget in contrast to the one the year before?
Yeah, particularly because, Sandeep, what we've all forgotten is that the CSO actually has given out the revised estimates. The previous year's growth was not 7.6 but 7.9.
So which is minus the demonetization impact.
So what you're going to see now in this fiscal is growth is going to be much less than perhaps even 7.1 that the CSO and the survey talk about. Maybe we'll be closer to 6.5, in which case in economy which is growing so much more slowly, if you try and also adhere to the fiscal roadmap, it's going to become really a tighter fiscal stance at a time when perhaps all over the world they're going for a looser fiscal stance. I know Western economists and credit rating agencies attach a great deal of importance to adherence to that fiscal roadmap. But if you see the past 2 years, the finance minister has stuck to that fiscal roadmap. That hasn't got us very much by way of FDI or FII. And in any case, FPI is very short term. So what we should look at is, does the government need to tweak the public investment, the capital investment, when private sector is not coming in, investment is not coming in. So I think this entire adherence to that fiscal number, which is where I think the NK thing.
Maithili, they will not be doing it for the third time in the tenure of this government. So this does raise a question on fiscal discipline as well.
In the last year they did adhere. In fact, they have consistently adhered despite their advice to
deferred and then adhered.
Yes. So this government, in fact, has by and large, in fact, the NDA government, BJP government has tended to stick to the fiscal roadmap at a time when today, as I said, the economy perhaps is slowing down much more than we anticipated, because you're going to compare any growth with 7.9% in the previous year, not just 7.6. So the economy actually was slowing down even before demonetization.
But it's not just growth rates, Nikunj, that are going from 7.6 to 7.9. It's also fiscal deficit, which went in from 3.9 to actually 4.6% for fiscal year 16, and that's not a very known fact. So they have not adhered to fiscal deficit for twice now in the tenure of this government alone.
The markets are not nervous. At least the bond markets are not nervous. PSU stocks are rallying. Banks are sitting at a new high. And Ramesh, so let's take that PSU theme slightly forward. It's not that the PSU finances are going to change dramatically or immensely. Yet PSU stocks, banks, oil companies, metal companies, they are exhibiting leadership patterns. I look at the screen and looks like the bull market is on in PSU stocks.
Nikunj, I agree, but I think some of it has been telegraphed by the North Bloc by telling them that they should give bonus shares out, which is an investor-friendly move. It doesn't really impact the valuation, but it's an investor-friendly move. By paying 30% payout, which a lot of private sector companies have not done yet, by being, businesses with a strong moat and strong growth prospects in the next few years, and the added sweetener that across industries, whether it is at Bharat Earth Movers, NMDC, or maybe some other companies, oil marketing companies, telecom companies, that could be up for privatization in the next year. I think that would be a benchmark of another big reform if the government finally uses its political muscle and power to move through parliament. We've tried it for 20 years and not been successful, starting from Mr. Arun Shourie and even before that. If this government can actually do a couple of big ticket strategic disinvestments, I think it will light a fire under all the PSU stocks.
Swami and Madhu, let me get a word in from Swami first. Which side of the fiscal deficit debate are you in? Maitri here is making a case for relaxation in the fiscal deficit target given the demonetization overhang. Swami, do you believe there's a case for the government to relax the target?
As I said before, this relaxation becomes meaningless in terms of economic growth. If we already have an investment rate of 30%, and you relax and say, I'm going to increase it by 0.2% of GDP. You really think that by increasing the investment rate from 30 to 30.2%, there's some big boost coming to the economy? Absolutely not. It is a tiny, insignificant part. And as Vinayak Chatterjee has said, there are many ways of doing it, extra budgetary resources. So I think the emphasis on the fiscal consolidation must continue. But as for new forms of getting revenue, I think nobody's mentioned it. I have argued year after year, why don't we legalize gambling or at least betting on cricket? Huge revenues can come just from that one single source. The other source that can yield huge revenues is beginning to FACE program tax BDs at the same rates as cigarettes. I mean, each of these things can fetch you 100,000 crores. So instead of faffing around on other things of, do I increase public investment by 30,000 crores?
Right.
Right now on the fiscal deficit issue, there are these other out-of-the-box things. It is possible to get this additional revenue. Then you will have more fiscal headroom to play around with many ideas.
Swami, I'm just putting out a disclaimer that of the many vices that all of us here on this panel have, smoking bidi or gambling is not one of them, just so that the viewers know, but you want to take it forward.
The taxation on bidi has not gone higher. I mean,
that's right.
In front of ladies and women, we should not be talking about smoking and bidis, but Sandeep, that's a fact, isn't it?
Yeah, and the point that Swami makes year after year, unfortunately, governments change, but their view on this clearly doesn't change. But Ramesh Damani, I want to come to you very quickly. Does the fiscal deficit number matter at all to the market? I know it's a big deal for the bond market, but this time around, there isn't so much of talk around the fisc. Do you think is it going to matter to the market if the government sticks to the 3.3% target for next year, or if there is some slippage of 20 basis points? Does it really matter to the market? Ramesh?
My sense is it does. The state fiscal deficit is a bit out of control, so if combine them together, it becomes a very meaningful number. And I think typically we've learned, at least for the last 20 years, to watch that number very closely. Foreign inflows drive a large part of our market, and they're very tuned to that number. So I think it's better to maintain the fiscal discipline, especially since the government has been doing such a good job over the last few years.
This question is coming your way in terms of important numbers like growth, fiscal deficit. From a market standpoint, how important is this, and do you think what kind of a leeway he could have on the spending number?
The market should be okay with that. Anything around 3.3%. should be good. I think as per the roadmap, they should have been at 3% this year, but I am sure if they deviate by 0.3%, it should not be an issue. Only if they go above 3.5%, then that could cause some kind of a jerk in the market, because then the overall theme about interest rate reduction and that all gets into a question mark.
But I want to get to the other specific, Mukesh, with you here. There is a lot of buzz that there could be a banking transaction tax that may be reintroduced after 12, 13 odd years, because the government wants to incentivize digital and disincentivize cash. Is it an idea that has outlived its perhaps relevance? Is it going to do much in terms of revenue receipts at all?
Well, I don't know. It certainly acts as a disincentive for people who are withdrawing cash. So it's a way of disincentivizing rather than incentivizing digital transactions. I think the experiment that we had in the past did not really succeed, but it certainly becomes a source of revenue mobilization for the government. I just wanted to make one point on the fiscal deficit. In my view, the fiscal deficit exercise is a mathematical, if not a statistical or an academic exercise, because we all know how you really work around the numbers, whether you hold back capital expenditure or you hold back tax refunds. But I think there is going to be a fundamental shift on a go-forward basis, primarily for two reasons. One is the change in the plan versus non-plan expenditure. And the second is the measuring the outcome of capital expenditure. So I think the government is likely to follow a different basis of accounting on a go-forward basis for accounting of revenues and accounting of expenditure. And I think that, in my view, could lead to a change in trend insofar as how we measure the fiscal deficit.
And also, Supriya, the banking tax, transaction tax actually is regressive, because who uses more cash? It is the poor who use more cash than the well-off. So in fact, at a time when indirect taxes,
that's my point, yes. Why
it doesn't serve any purpose at all. At a time when indirect tax ratio has already gone up, which is regressive, we need to go in more and more for direct, which is progressive tax, and you're introducing a banking cash transaction tax, which only hurts the poor. So it's really completely contrary to what the government says.
So it just complicates the entire tax system.
There is a lot of buzz that it may make a comeback.
Let's get down to more specifics as well. Jahangir, is these GST convergence of rates likely to happen in this budget? What's your view on what he's likely to do as far as indirect taxes are concerned in this budget? Jahangir Aziz.
Well, look, I mean, if you look at the the news on what the current negotiations, etc., are on GST keeps changing. But the broad view is that if we are going to go in for a average rate, not standardized rate, an average rate, let's say of 18, 19, 20%, somewhere on those lines, then in fact services taxes will actually have to go up. So you can try rationalizing them by increasing the threshold levels, etc., etc., etc. But at the end of the day, we will have to wait and see how GST is implemented, when it is implemented, the initial impact of GST. But the broad contours of GST based on other countries' experiences and the lessons that we should draw from other countries' experiences is something that we need to take seriously, i.e. that the rules of GST should be simple, i.e. therefore there should not be too many brackets. We should not try and use GST to accomplish 15 million different things.
Well, if you're a trader, eyes down, 5 to 7 minutes is when the finance minister is expected to rise on the floor of the parliament. But how are market positioned? For a trader, it's the positioning which really matters. We've seen one of the sharpest pre-budget rally in 2017. So a post-budget sell-off cannot be ruled out in terms of a market positioning. The ET now Fear and Greed Index is not an extreme greed zone, but it is marching towards a greed zone. So unlike last year's budget where we saw 7-8% come back from the low 2 days after the budget, that may not be the case this time. Nifty is not at 6,800, it is at 8,600. That's point number 2. And point number 3, we've looked at the budget sentiment card, and here's some proprietary data which tells you that every time markets tend to swing the other way of FI positioning, and foreign institutional investors this time are highly positive, unlike previous occasions where the positioning was radically different. So the technicals and the pre-budget action is not indicating for a big bang post-budget move. CK Narayan, 30 seconds to answer this one. What are the levels during the budget speech one should monitor?
Well, surely on the higher side, we should be looking at about 8675 as a trigger point, because that is the recently established level that the budget met with, the index met with some supply zones. On the lower side, I would think I would want to map it somewhere at about 8560, 8570. Both these levels I'm talking about are on Nifty futures and not on Nifty spot. Those are the immediate levels that I would look at as a day's perspective. But of course, if you want wider one, we'll have to go down to about 8400. There is no bearishness as far as the signal is concerned.
Ramesh Damani, I'll ask you a difficult one. How soon before the market makes a new high? Budget, no budget?
I think it's on course to do that. There are some fears about what's happening in the US, but I think there are wiser people in the US than the president right now, and they will checkmate his mercantilist instincts and not let it go to a protectionist economy as perhaps he's asking for right now. I don't think that's going to happen. Having said that, I think India continues to remain in a sweet spot, and we are marching towards the new high, Nikunj.
That's interesting with Subhra and Sandeep, that 2 minutes before the budget speech, when we're talking about Arun Jaitley, we're talking about Donald Trump. That's the market positioning.
That he's not the smartest man in the US. We're also saying that in the same breath.
Swami, let's get closing comments from our panelists before we toss to the finance minister. 2.5 minutes is when he's going to be making his speech. Swami, quick one to you. The 3 things that you think he has to do in this budget. 30 seconds. 3 things he has to do in this budget.
He has to find a way of taking the black money and showing that I am distributing it in a big way. He needs to stick to the fiscal deficit of 3%. He needs to bring the corporate tax rate down sharply. These are the things that will give him credibility with investors and with the masses.
All right, so those are the 3 things from Swaminathan Iyer. But Madhu Kela, if I may ask you, what would this budget mean in terms of making an impression on you as an investor?
So for the day itself, there are a lot of firsts which are being done. So I think there might be reasonable amount of confusion in the markets owing to the numbers as to how do they treat the railway budget, because if they combine the numbers might look different than what we are used to. They have said that they will merge the revenue and the capital expenditure together. What is the format of that? Third, how do you treat the compensation for GST, whether you account for that or not? On the revenue side, what happened in VDIS 2, which was being launched? How much money came in? Is there in accounting? Is there an assumption which the government is taking? So all these are first, and the most important thing, which is very positive, which I think the market seems to have missed, is that the preponement of date of 1st February means a lot, because in a normal course you have a budget at 28th, then by the time it is passed and by the time allocations are being made, it is end May or June. This time around, I think the government is planning to do all of that in the month of April. So you will see the spending boost coming from the first quarter itself. So that, to my mind, again is a first, and it is very positive.
Counting down to the finance minister's speech. But before we do that, I think we'd like to tell our viewers what are the sectors and stocks that are going to be in focus. Doesn't matter if you're an investor or a trader, what are the sectors and stocks that you should be focusing on? Neeraj from the budget wall. Very quickly, Neeraj.
Sandeep, if you look at the market positioning, PSU banks are very active, so maybe people expect something in the PSUs to come about. But if I can move to spaces, I mean, yes, IT is a bit soft, but if I can move to spaces, I think 2 or 3 pockets. One of them is infra, of course. And if indeed the capital outlay is increased, then the stocks like L&T, Sadbhav, IRB Infra could well be in focus. They will come up on your screen. So infrastructure, it will all be about the L&Ts of the world. But more importantly, I just want to mark one pocket, Sandeep, and that is housing finance companies. I think a lot of expectation in terms of personal income tax benefits as well as some benefits to low-cost housing or otherwise. And if all of that comes about, I think housing finance companies it is. So do watch out for all of these names, be it Canfin Homes, Indiabulls Housing, LIC Housing Finance. I think these are the pockets, along with autos and Ashok Leyland, that people need to really keep their eye out for when it comes to this budget speech.
All right, so we're getting you the macro and the micro perspective, the stocks that you should be betting on, and of course the macro picture all put together by that. But Ramesh Damani, very quickly, it's always a tough walk for any finance minister to make, and especially in the middle of 5 very, very crucial state assembly elections, whether to be a reformist or to be a populist. How do you do the structural reforms after you've got GST out of the way? So tough choices for Finance Minister Jaitley. What would you want him to do today as far as the big picture of reforms is concerned?
Well, the two obvious things that stand out are, first, the disinvestment target. Does the government have the political stomach to bite and go in for strategic disinvestment? I'm looking for that. Secondly, there's an enormous transformation going on in one of the world's largest economy as we move from cash to cashless. What is the government thinking on that? How are they going to incentivize cashless transaction? That has very strong reformative power over the next 5 years, 10 years. So I'll be looking for measures that the government is undertaking for the movement from cash to cashless.
Madhu Kela, let me get closing comments from you before we toss it to the Finance Minister. There is a slight delay in the presentation of the budget. Probably Supriya will tell us why that delay is happening. In fact, as we speak, the Lok Sabha Speaker